I consider a few that would not be.
One of them, you would be surprised. Mary, I'm taking Scott.
Still 8:59.
Gavel in your hand.
Okay.
There it is, 9 o'clock. Let's go.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the February 10th meeting of the Memphis and Shelby County Land Use Control Board. My name is Mary W. Sharp, and I will be serving as your chairperson today. We will begin this morning's meeting with a roll call. Mr. Ragsdale, would you proceed, please?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Fleming? Here. Mr. Gill?
Here.
Mr. McKinnon?
Present.
Ms. O'Connell?
Here.
Ms. Wilbanks?
Here.
Mr. Tolles?
Here.
Mr. Thomas?
Here.
Dr. Pritchard?
Here.
Chair Sharp?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Ragsdale. I would like to remind you that copies of today's agenda are located at the front right podium if you need them. If you wish to be a speaker on any case that is on today's agenda, please fill out an attendance speaker's card located at the front podiums. Once you have filled out the card, please bring it up front and hand it to one of the DPD staff members located at the left podium. When that agenda item is called, you will be given an opportunity to speak. At this point, I would like to read our conflict of interest statement. The adopted policy of the Land Use Control Board requires that any member of the board recuse himself or herself from any participation in the discussion or voting on any matter on the meeting's agenda in which he or she may have direct or indirect personal interest. The member shall vacate his or her seat during deliberation on any matter from which they have recused themselves. An abstention may substitute for a recusal for the purposes of maintaining a quorum. I would like to now get approval of our minutes from last meeting in January. May I have a motion?
Yes, so moved.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I assume we're ready to vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we are ready for our director's remarks, if we have any today. Mr. Zena?
Good morning, board members. I have just a short announcement for my director's report. As you know, we conducted a search for our next zoning administrator to replace Mr. Whitehead. Our search did not have to go too far and take too long. I'm pleased to share with you that Mr. Brett Ragsdale has been promoted from deputy administrator and acting zoning administrator to being appointed as the zoning administrator by Mayor Strickland and Mayor Harris. So I want to extend my congratulations to Brett and look forward to his leadership of this department.
Congratulations. Okay.
That concludes my report.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I would like to make one announcement first. Mr. McKinnon's birthday is in February, about on the 22nd, and he will be 1 year, whatever. And we wanted to take the time to extend a happy birthday to you.
All right.
Okay. Mr. Ragsdale, may I please get a secretary's report for this month and an explanation of today's procedures?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I don't really have a secretary's report, but I would like to just follow up on Director Zena's announcement, and I'm honored and thrilled to take this position under Director Zena's leadership and our great team that we have in the division and our boards and commissions. So I really appreciate the opportunity and look forward to it. And the procedures for today's meeting are as follows. At the beginning of today's meeting, we will establish a consent agenda for those items where no one in the audience or on the board is requesting an individual public hearing. After the consent agenda is established and approved, we will move on to the regular agenda. For each case on the regular agenda, the DPD planner will give a presentation. This will be followed by the applicant's presentation and any testimony from others who support the application. The applicant and supporters will be given a total of 10 minutes. Following each speaker, the chair will ask the board members if they have any questions for that speaker. Next, the opposition will be given a total of 10 minutes to present their case. Following each speaker, the chair will ask the board members if they have any questions for that speaker. Finally, the applicant will then have a 3-minute rebuttal period under the same rules. Following all the presentations and after all parties have been heard, the chair will ask the board members if they have any questions of anyone who spoke. Then the chair will close the public hearing portion of the case, entertain a motion on the matter, discuss, and then vote on the application. If an applicant or any speaker would like to be heard after the conclusion of the public hearing portion of the case, or if a board member wishes to hear any additional testimony from any party for additional clarification, a motion will need to be made along with a second and then a 2/3 affirmative vote of the board required to open the public hearing portion of the agenda item. If the public hearing is reopened, both the applicant and the opposition will be allowed an equal amount of time to provide additional testimony. After the additional comments, the board will close the public hearing portion of the case and deliberate and take a final vote. Again, if any member of the audience wishes to provide testimony in support or opposition to the case, he or she will need to fill out a speaker's card. These are available at the front podium. Speaker's cards are not required of applicants since their names are already part of the record.
Is that it, Mr. Ragsdale?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ragsdale. The board is a supporter of community involvement, and we welcome neighborhood comments and feedback. We're respectful of the fact that many of you have taken off work or adjusted your schedules to be here today. But we ask that your comments be made within the time frame allowed. If there are multiple speakers, please try to not be repetitive so as to make the most of your side's 10-minute time allowed. For example, if your reason is it's going to lower the value of our properties, then 10 people don't need to say it's going to lower the value of our properties. Have each one have a valid point so that you can get all of your points in the time allowed. Lastly, I'd like to ask you to all silence your cell phones so as not to interrupt or disturb anyone during today's proceedings. We're now ready to move to the consent agenda. With our procedures now explained, I would like to introduce to my right Ms. Lisa Wilbanks, who will be this morning's consent agenda chairperson. Ms. Wilbanks will read items 1 through 18 as the consent agenda. Once the consent agenda is read, if you wish to discuss one of those items individually, please come forward and give us that item number, and we will pull that case. We will then vote on the remaining, we will still vote on the remaining consent agenda items as one vote, and following the vote, we will hear the cases that were pulled individually. Ms. Wilbanks, would you proceed, please?
Yes, ma'am. Just for notes, items 2, 3, and 4 are withdrawn. Item number 5, case PD 21-42 in East Memphis. The request is a planned residential development at the block enclosed by Rich Road, Northeast Yates Road, Barfield Road, and Cole Grove Street. Staff recommendation is hold for 1 month. Item number 6, case SUP 21-37 in Alcee Ball. The request is a used vehicle sales at 2328 Elvis Presley. Staff recommendation is hold for 1 month. Item number 7 has been withdrawn. Item number 8, case MJR 22-01 in Ridgeway. The request is a major modification to PD 96-366 for a new attached signage at 999 Shady Grove Road. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Item number 9, case MJR 22-02 in Hillshire. The request is a dedication and construction of Murray Farms Road, northwest of Appling Road and Appling Farms Parkway. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Item number 10, case MJR 22-03 in Southeast Shelby County. The request is a site plan review for 100 single-family residential lots at the northeast corner of Shelby Drive and Irene Woods Lane. Staff recommendation is a hold for 1 month. Item number 11, case MJR 22-04 at Windike. The request is a site plan review for 188 single-family residential lots at 4500 Mayfield Road. Staff recommendation is hold for 1 month. Item number 12, case S 21-50 in Whitehaven. The request is a six-lot single-family subdivision at 1160 Ackland Road. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Item number 13, case S2204 in Whitehaven. The request is a 42-lot, single-family residential subdivision at the parcel partially enclosed by Mickey, Patty Ann, and Timothy Drives. Staff recommendation is hold for 1 month. Item number 14, case SUP 22-01 in Raleigh. The request is a cell tower at 3788 Raleigh-Millington Road. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Item number 15, case SUP 22-02 in Whitehaven. The request is a special use permit for auto body repair shop at 5219 Mill Branch. Staff recommendation is hold for 1 month. Item number 16, case SUP 22-03 in Whitehaven. The request is a motel with plus or minus 120 rooms at 2190 East Shelby Drive. Staff recommendation is approval with condition. And item number 17 is a resolution of the Land Use Control Board adopting certain amendments to the Memphis 3.0 Comprehensive Plan. Staff recommendation is hold for 1 month. And item number 18 is a resolution of the Land Use Control Board recommending that the Memphis City Council adopt certain amendments to the Memphis 3.0 Comprehensive Plan. Staff recommendation is hold for 1 month. And that is our consent agenda.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, and if I may, we did get 2 cards on item number 14, so that will need to be pulled from the consent agenda. We just got those. Thank you.
No.
The items on the consent agenda will now be voted on with 1 vote, subject to the recommendation of DPD. If this consent agenda is approved, only items number 1 and 14 will have full independent public hearings. By voting on the consent agenda, each board member is affirming that he or she has read the staff report and agrees with its finding and, where applicable, its recommended conditions. Can I get a motion, please?
Yes, ma'am. Move to approve. Item number 5, case PD 21-42 as a hold. Item number 6, case SUP 21-37 as a hold. Item number 8, case MJR 22-01. Item number 9, case MJR 22-02. Item number 10, case MJR 22-03 as a hold. Item number 11, case MJR 22-04 as a hold. Item number 12, case S21-50. Item number 13, case S2204 is a hold. Item number 15, case SUP 22-02 is a hold. Item number 16, case SUP 22-03. Item number 17, and item number 18. Both of those are held as well for 1 month.
Thank you, Ms. Wilbanks. Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
I do hear a second. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion amongst our board members? Hearing none, I assume we're ready to vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Now we're ready to go to Dr. Pritchard on the regular agenda.
Item number 1, MJR 21-45, Southwind adjacent correspondence to PD 94-356, apartment complex at 3581 Tournament Drive South, and 2 adjacent parcels. Staff recommendation is approval.
Is the applicant present? Could you give us your name and address?
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Cindy Reeves, SR Consulting, 5909 Shelby Oaks Drive, Suite 200.
And is there any opposition? I think I do see opposition. Okay, we're ready for you to present the case. Mr. Davis.
Good morning, everyone. Brett Davis with the Division of Planning and Development. I'm going to be presenting agenda item 1, MJR 21-45. This is a request for a major modification subject to Land Use Control Board approval to PD 94-356. All right, so just some general information. The proposed name is the Tournament Trails Center Plan Development located at 3581 Tournament Drive South and 2 adjacent parcels owned by Holiday Inn. The applicant is RE Investments, a limited liability company represented by Ms. Reeves. I want to emphasize that it's a little unusual, but the applicant has requested that only the use be considered today. So no official site plan is before you for consideration. The request is to alter the outline plan conditions of the PD to allow apartments, and a site plan would be required to come back to this board for a subsequent public hearing with the same notice requirements just to approve the site plan with the use having already been approved today, hypothetically. And the area of the 3 parcels together is just under 18 acres. Here's a map of where we're looking. Let me talk for just a moment on the jurisdictional boundaries out here. The site is within the city of Memphis. It's just under 2,000 feet to the west of Germantown municipal boundaries. And although it doesn't touch, it's just under the Southwind neighborhood, which is not in the city of Memphis, it's in unincorporated Shelby County. So it's sort of at the confluence of a few different jurisdictions. Here are the 3 parcels. That road running east-west to their south is Winchester. There are private streets that have already been built out to serve an office building owned by the Holiday Inn Company to the northwest. And just to the north, those single-family lots are now where you hit unincorporated Southwind. All right. And I will also point out while I have this map up, that street to the east is Tournament Drive South, and that is a metaphorical backdoor to Southwind. There is ingress and egress, and I have some photos to show you that road ahead. It's a pretty narrow road. What's the zoning like out here? Essentially, everything in the area was approved through the plan development process in the 1990s with preliminary hearings heard by this body. There is some industrial zoning to the west, and the rest is mostly agricultural, single family, but none of that underlying zoning really matters anymore. So it's all within plan developments. These parcels themselves, this block is its own plan development. It's zoned for office uses with some restaurant uses allowed as well. Land use map. So that sort of follows the zoning, of course. We see that there has been an office developed under this plan development. Again, Holiday Inn. At the southeast corner of this block, there is brown signifying multifamily. That's a memory care facility. On the other side of Tournament Drive, blue, Civic. That's a church. And it's hard to see on your maps, but to the southeast, down Winchester, a number of apartment communities have been built. To the north is single-family residential surrounding golf courses, and to the west, purple industrial, that is a warehouse. So that's sort of a sense of what's going on in the area. Here is the existing outline plan. Again, office uses. That northwest parcel of the 3 parcels we're considering today was actually approved, has a development plan that was approved at the same time that the existing office building was approved for a very similar 3-story office building. It was never, of course, developed. The other 2 parcels have never gone through a final plan review. Just some photos. So here is sort of the grassy land we're considering with that 3-story office building in the background. Here is another parcel of the subject land with the memory care facility in the background. It's a 1-story building. There is a very pleasant pond that also doubles as drainage, separating this land from Southwind. And here's just a look at some of those private streets with Winchester on your left here in the distance. This is Tournament Drive South, so likely this road would require some sort of improvement during site plan review if this reached that stage. But as you can see, it does narrow quite a bit following where development sort of seizes on its side. Here's a conceptual site plan submitted by the applicant. Again, if this is approved today, you are not approving the site plan. Staff has not reviewed this site plan. This is just to give you a sense of what they're thinking. So 4 buildings, detention pond, parking, some conceptual inspiration images of the sort of apartment complex the applicant would like to build. Again, non-binding. So in conclusion, the request is a major modification to permit an apartment complex Usually, changes to uses in a PD require legislative approval with the stipulation that if you're trading out a more intensive use for a less intensive use, then you can do it through the major modification process at the Land Use Control Board. So technically, the applicant has requested the trade out of restaurant for apartment as a permitted use. Again, the site plan would be subject to LUCB conditional approval. Later on, if approved, everything would be on the table at that point. Height, density, number of units, access, which streets, vehicles are entering and exiting, parking, architecture, etc. None of that was considered for this presentation. And staff does find that the proposal is consistent with the comprehensive plan, Memphis 3.0, as well as nearby land uses, and that it would not result in undue injury to the surrounding area. That said, staff does note that 96 letters of opposition were received, I think all from Southwind, the gated community to the north, and unincorporated Shelby County. And I summarized the concerns related in those letters as related to crime, traffic, noise, and drainage. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Do we have any questions of Mr. Davis at this time? Okay, hearing none, we're ready for the presentation, and we don't have any opposition. Here they go. Okay, we're ready for the presentation of the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And we do have Mr. Gill keeping time today.
I'm going to reserve a lot of my time for rebuttal, and you want to say your name and record for the
Hey, I'm Priyank Shah,
and address.
12406 Hogan's Alley, Chester, Virginia, 23836.
So I just wanted to introduce you to the developer. Right now, we just have zoning entitlement because we're under contract with the Kimmons-Wilson family to purchase this property. As you know, the property's been vacant for an extremely long time. It's zoned for office. During the pandemic, the need for office is drastically reduced. The need for residential, multifamily, single family has risen just tremendously. We feel a need for this. We've been working with the neighborhood over the last 90 days. We had agreed to a lot of the site plan aspects by limiting the height and not going above the 4 stories, limiting access on Tournament Drive to where it would not have 3 additional points of access. It would have an emergency-only access onto Tournament Drive. We feel that's a big concession that we've made. We'll also be making improvements to Tournament Drive to finish out that improvement and that gap that's in there between their entrance and the Alzheimer's facility to the east. So even though we won't be accessing Tournament Drive, we are going to be making the improvements. We agreed to work with them on colors, materials, architectural style. As you can see on page 12, there's examples of what we're looking at. It's very similar to like the Monarch, where you go into a lobby, you go in an elevator and you go up. It's not your typical walk-up apartments that you see across the street. So it's it's a Class A apartment complex, and it's something different and unique that we don't have in this area. As far as drainage, we are extremely familiar with drainage. We have worked with Windike, we have worked with Southwind, and we have worked with Champion Hill. So we're very familiar with the drainage in that area. And as we all know, that will be approved by the city engineer. So we feel that we've worked really hard to come to a compromise, and we feel that this is a good use for the property, and we would appreciate your support, and we'll save the rest of our time for rebuttal.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions of the applicant at this time? Anybody have any questions?
I do have some questions. Why take this route, Cindy? If you had taken other than saving money during the due diligence period, it's hard for the neighbors to get, when you show no renderings, no elevations, we're only voting on use, it's just really, I see why there's 100 neighbors that have pushed against this, because they've not been sold any kind of vision on what this thing could be. Obviously, you got to come back to Land Use Control Board. So other than cost, what's the decision to do this twice?
Actually, on page 11 is a conceptual site plan, and on to page 12 of your staff report are examples of architecture that he's looking at. And the reason is the closing, as soon as he gets the zoning entitlement, then he closes without site plan approval. But he's on a tight schedule to close, and they will not wait for site plan approval because it would take too long for him to really get into the nuts and bolts of it. Plus, he's not going to just do one phase that's the entire property. He's going to come in one phase at a time with site plan approval.
So the site plan that you're showing is really low density. It's a 17-acre site. You're showing like 250 odd units. It's really a low density site plan. But we're not approving this site plan. Is that a phase one, or is this?
No, that's just a conceptual of how the entire site could be developed.
So he could come back with a much denser site plan. I mean, not even showing I don't know. I have trouble. I don't mind this use on this property. I'm struggling with the lack of information. And I realize that we're just voting on use, but I feel like we're stepping through the door, and I agree with you about the office market. Office won't be developed on this site long term.
Right.
But I think this is not the way to do it without creating an enormous amount of opposition. So that's all I have to say.
And if we could push the closing date back, then we would be glad to do that, but it would take too much time, and they're not going to let us do it. I want to also point out, we oriented the buildings so that we did not have a building that's facing toward Southwind. We've got just the end caps of those buildings, so we felt that was another, even though it's not efficient, we felt it was a good, compromise. So.
Hey, good morning, Sydney. JC, how was the meeting with the residents of Southwind? How did that go?
We've been dealing with the board, and we've had a lot of really good conversations, and they've given us a lot of ideas. They're the ones who had suggested emergency access only on Tournament Drive, and we've taken into consideration a lot of their comments, and we want to work very closely with Southwind when it does go in for site plan approval. But we feel that it's going to be a gated community. We don't feel that security is an issue. We've even agreed to top-rated security systems and rules with the residents if they misuse the security. And we feel that with the distance and the natural vegetation that we're keeping, the lake, everything, we've got quite a bit of distance. I think we're almost 300 or 400 feet from them, and that was done intentional.
We still have to get through this, but I would definitely say, just from my aspect, my point of view is you really have to get in there with the 96 people who are opposed and have a fear or worry about values of their properties or whatever the case may be, and just have that conversation with them. Of course, then supplying more information that would say, hey, this is what we're doing, this is the route that we're taking, how can we make sure that you're happy? I think in every development is a public-private venture where, the public has to be okay and the private has to win. So it's creating a win-win situation. In this one, it's a lot of opposition that, you guys have from those residents. But that's all I wanted. Those my questions. But
yeah, we don't feel that this site can be developed as office, and we wish that it could.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Anybody else? Any questions? Okay.
Chair, I'm just sitting here. I want to hear from the neighbors.
Here we go. Yeah, I want to hear from the neighbors, of course, but this is a strange way to do this, and I'm thinking about the protection, the neighbor. What if this gets approved and the world blows up? I want to make sure the neighbors are protected. If we approve this and something happens, is that going to open the door for somebody else to develop something that has nothing to do with this concept plan? There's really nothing other than your goodwill, which you've been down here, and your reputation and so forth is excellent, but we've got to have something to hang our hat on that protects everybody as we go forward. I don't know how it's going to come down, but that's the concern I'm thinking through with you.
And that's the reason that we thought that the protection is the site plan review. I mean, that's when we'll get into all the nuts and bolts and really nail down the architecture and work with the neighbors. But we can't close on the land without the zoning entitlements.
So the protection is still in the,
Yes, sir.
the outline,
In the site plan review.
site plan review. Yeah.
We feel that that's, very good protection.
Okay.
How bad do they want to sell it? Like,
No, I'm going to let you answer that. He said, how bad do they want to sell it? They've been pretty tough sellers.
They've been pretty tough on the timeline, and it's been a pretty tight, compact timeline with only time provided as needed as we worked through some conversations with the HOA, and we've pushed this meeting back a few times, and they've been able to accommodate on that, but it's because we've had costs behind it.
They were really hard and reluctant to give the 90 days that we asked for to work with the neighbors. But fortunately, we got it. We feel that we got a lot of input for if we get the zoning entitlements for a site plan review. So.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we do have some cards here of opposition, so I'm just going to call names rather than to wait for people to come up. And when you get to the podium, please give us your address, name and address. Michael Smith? Pardon?
He's going to refer to the speaker.
Okay.
All right. My name is Jesse Baker. I live at 3566 Wingard Cove, which is in the Southwind resident area. I'm also a member of the board for the Southwind Residential Property Association, which is why I'm speaking to you today. So, Madam Chair, members of the board, first of all, thank you for your consideration of our opposition to this major modification request. Like has been said, this is not typically the way business is done, and so we felt it was important that we come down here today and talk to you. In short, our opposition today is as a result of not being able to reach a signed agreement with the developer on a set of what we believe were very reasonable requests to mitigate some of the potential negative aspects of the apartments built in close proximity to our homes, as you saw on the slide. As Ms. Reeves has stated, both sides have been engaged in productive discussions over the last 3 months, so we would affirm that belief. But at the end of the day, the process culminated last week in their rejection of a formal offer from us, and as a result, we were unable to put in place a signed agreement prior to this meeting. As such, the residents you see behind you this morning were hurriedly organized last night to try to make sure that our position was acknowledged after essentially all available time for negotiations had expired. As you're aware, the crux of the modification pertains to trading out land set aside for restaurant use in favor of an additional apartment complex on 3 parcels, as has been discussed. I'd like to draw your attention specifically to the nearly 90 separate households that provided letters of opposition and voiced significant concerns about traffic, noise, drainage, impact on wildlife, school capacity, neighborhood appearance, and more. I will be the first one to admit that I am not an expert in zoning and planning. However, it's exceedingly surprising to me that abandoning restaurant space for high-density dwellings appears to have been very quickly declared consistent with Memphis planning, given the large number of new apartment complexes recently completed, currently being completed, or planned for future construction for this area. A point I'd like to come back to in a minute. In reality, the 2 categories, food service and high-density residential, share very little in common with each other in terms of their impact on our community. Restaurants operate within very specific hours, as we have seen, sometimes not even 7 days a week. Neither overall traffic density nor rush hour traffic specifically would be impacted as a result of a restaurant. Furthermore, a restaurant's impact on overall neighborhood noise is likely to be minimal and then only during the hours of operation. On the other hand, a high-density apartment complex of this type, whether it's 250 or 300 units, is going to add significantly to traffic volume. Approximately 70% of the planned units are designated as 2 or 3 bedrooms. A conservative estimate on our part suggests that nearly 500 vehicles would then be transiting twice daily at a minimum through the intersection onto Winchester Road. As apartments residents head to or from work and school, rush hour traffic will be impacted in the area. It has been suggested, as we have broached the subject, that a traffic light will be very hard to justify. As a result, whether they're commuting in the morning or coming home at night, all of those 500 residents would have to turn across 3 lanes of traffic unprotected during rush hour, or would have to go to the next crossover to make an unprotected U-turn to come back to the entrance into the property. Furthermore, traffic in and out of the apartment complex would occur 7 days a week, nearly 24 hours a day. Additional noise would be generated from outdoor common areas, increased maintenance requirements, etc. Clearly, there's a significantly more pronounced impact from high-density residential usage than from restaurant. Of concern from the staff report, and for your consideration, while Mr. Davis provided an overview, the zoning map on page 8 fails to thoroughly include a larger view of the community and focuses, in our viewpoint, rather myopically on the plats under discussion. This is the point to which I wanted to return. If you zoom out further on the Shelby County GIS website, you'll see other nearby plats previously designated as conservation areas that have also been modified and upon which high-density apartments have recently been built. Just to the east across Forest Hill, Irene, there are 2 or 3 additional apartment complexes that are being built by Collierville. I think the estimates on those come in close to 800 additional apartments, if I'm not mistaken. The ones to the south of Winchester are going to be another 500 or 600, I believe. And there's a couple single-family residences all going, or single-family residence developments all going in the same area as well. After studying the myriad changes completed and proposals currently in consideration for new apartment complexes, it seems impossible for me to conclude that these are consistent with previous strategic planning efforts. We understand and acknowledge that there are significant housing issues to address in the greater Shelby County community, but abandoning Memphis 3.0 planning initiatives to rapidly expand high-density housing without considering its broader impact will inevitably lead to systemic problems in the future that will be much harder and much more expensive to solve. We believe an extremely important aspect of neighborhood planning for this property has been unintentionally overlooked, namely that these plats are located at the intersection of property boundaries, as has been acknowledged for the city of Memphis, Germantown, Collierville, and the newly incorporated Shelby County as a result of last year's de-annexation. As a result, there appears to be a lack of deconfliction or consideration given to what other planning boards are doing or on the nearby currently undeveloped land. And to be clear, our critique is not leveled solely at this board. We would suggest that the conclusion in the staff report that this modification is in line with Memphis 3.0 fails to acknowledge all pertinent considerations to determine if this major modification should be made. While the parcel is in the city of Memphis, the Shelby County Land Use Board must consider its overall location with respect to the other nearby municipalities. We submit to you that additional work is needed by the staff to truly understand the community impact and your assessment of its recommendations and approvals. Lastly, as it pertains to the letters in support, we argue that the points made need to be taken in clear view of the significant financial interests of the people who made them. To be clear, while there are nearly 90 letters of opposition, there are 3 letters of support, one of which was included twice. Simply put, all 3 signatories are poised to profit from the sale of the land or the presence of the apartments if the modification is approved. We agree the most compelling point in these 3 letters, the challenge that commercial properties now face with extensive remote working in a post-COVID world, is valid. However, that has nothing to do with a modification request to change out apartment use for what is currently restaurant use. Further, as can be seen from the current housing market, the drive for remote working has motivated many to seek out single-family homes, or at the very least, living facilities with more space for remote working. In no way does this apartment complex provide anything resembling a solution to that problem. It's high-density, small units. In summary, we respectfully oppose the modification to trade out restaurant for apartment use, and we ask the board to reject this request. If you feel that a no vote would be premature at this time, we request that the matter be reassigned back to staff, which I know is unusual given that it's already been delayed 90 days. However, we believe a more thorough analysis that incorporates planning considerations from other municipalities is needed, and also this might allow us the time required to finance in writing what has been to this point in time an agreement made only in principle. Thank you for your time. I'd like to now introduce Mike Smith to make a statement, unless you have questions for me specifically.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Baker. We'll ask questions after we hear all of you.
You have about 2 minutes.
We actually have 3 more speakers, so, okay.
Thank you very much. My name is Michael Smith. I live at 3198 South Silverman Cove, Memphis, Tennessee, 38125. I, like everybody else here in the audience, is opposed to this, and I would like to point out a couple technical issues that may be being overlooked, and as you said earlier, are a little thin on detail. First, it was stated earlier this morning that this property does not directly adjoin the Southwind property. I disagree with that. There is a section of this that adjoins the common area of the Southwind residential neighborhood. Also, I'd like to point out that with this change, it is not only a major change, but it is a change over zoning and a land use that has been assigned over 20 plus years. The reason I'm saying that is there has been somehow in the past an assignment of apartments that are nearby that are distanced from the single-family residential neighborhood. Right now, the 5 nearest apartments to Southwind are ranging from about 800 feet to 2,000 feet away from the neighborhood. Also, none of those 5 apartments have an adjoining boundary to any other single-family residential neighborhood. So if this change were made, that would be a drastic precedent set to create the positioning of such diametrically opposed housing between the high-density residential multifamily, multi-stories to the relatively spread out single-family residential area. The other thing, and I'm sure my time's getting away here, the other thing I would really like to point out is, in addition to the historical pattern that is being broken on this, there's been some suggestion that having an infill such as this meets the Memphis 3.0 plan. I don't think that's really the case, and I hope that you all are using that plan in a little better way than this. This property is located at the far eastern edge of the city of Memphis limits. It is basically one property away from the edge, and it's on a very narrow peninsula of commercial and industrial properties along Winchester. The plan basically says to aim for having such multi-use high-density apartments in an anchor area, and it sort of implies that you should try to make those areas a walkable neighborhood, and there's sort of a detailed definition in the plan for that. In my opinion, this will never be a walkable neighborhood. The reason I say that, as I said earlier, it's out there on a peninsula by itself. It does not have sidewalks on any of the adjoining properties,
Sir,
which are already established.
You're out of time.
Sorry.
Madam Chair.
Hopefully you will understand the details and reject this and vote no. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Now, we have 2 more speakers, and we're out of you're out of your time on the opposition side, but I will extend 30 seconds to the other 2 speakers apiece.
And they were only the docket to answer questions. They have nothing to say as far as a presentation is concerned.
Okay. All right. We've heard the opposition. Board members, do you have any questions of any of the opposition
I have
at this time?
one question for the opposition, and if you could just summarize what the neighborhood asked of the developer. I don't need a long explanation, just the list of items that were asked of the developer.
As Ms. Reeves has already mentioned, most of the items had to do with the future site planning considerations. So it was increased access along Tournament Drive, basically widening that out to remove some of the current issues. It was reducing access on Tournament Drive to only emergency vehicles so that there would be no ingress and egress for residents from Tournament Drive. It was a limitation on the height of the building as well as some color considerations, just palette type stuff basically. Security issues, as she mentioned, were of considerable concern to us just because of some issues that we have had with our neighborhood and security of personnel as well. And then probably the single biggest ticket item from a financial expense was currently the property is divided on the northern boundary by a chain link fence. It's like a 4-foot tall, very old, broken down by many trees with ice, etc. chain link fence. And so we were looking for a more established perimeter in that regard, mostly for the purposes of being a noise buffer. So it was the establishment of the building of a fence that ran essentially the length of the property past where the current office building sits and ties into where St. Jude has the parking lot out there for the uses for the golf tournament. So it was to basically shore up that southern border with something that would provide some sound buffer from the noise and light pollution, for lack of a better term, that's going to be associated with the properties and the parking lots in close proximity to the southern border.
If the developer agreed to those items, would Southwind support this development?
That's the discussion we've been having back and forth. And I think the answer is yes. I'm not sure, to be perfectly honest. We thought we were there a couple weeks ago. And then due to the reticence to put anything in writing and the rapid back and forth, I would tell you that the board lost faith in the developer's position and willingness to actually see it through to completion. So that's kind of where we're at. 2 weeks ago, I would have said unequivocally yes, but the back and forth that occurred over the last 2 weeks and what we thought was an established position was then backed off to be something significantly less that would probably not pay for the items in question. As a result, we kind of went backwards insofar as the board's consensus position on that. So,
thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions of the opposition at this time before we hear the rebuttal? Any other questions of the opposition for the opposition at this time? Okay, we're ready for your rebuttal, and I think you have a little more than 3 minutes because
she does. She says a little over 10 minutes for rebuttal if you need it, because you've saved so much time before.
Okay, thank you.
I also want to point out that the homes on Southwind Drive, they don't face south into this property either. It's just their garages or abut Southwind Drive. The one item that we had a lot of going back and forth on in discussion is the payment of a fence on Southwind Drive. And we had originally, in one meeting, it was approximately $130,000, and then we added some extra square footage, and it became $150,000. They came back and asked us for a not to exceed of $200,000 to put in an escrow account for them to build the fence or the wall, and we agreed to that last night. So we would put $200,000 in an escrow account after site plan approval. He can't bind this property with any kind of an agreement because he doesn't own it. He can't put restrictions on property that he has no right to put restrictions on. He only needs the zoning entitlements to be able to sign and agree to all those restrictions. And we'll be glad to sign and agree that, once we get this, once he is the owner, then these will be bound to this property. So we felt that, we were extremely, extremely close. It was a matter of, I think it's a 1,300 or 1,400 foot wall, and we had discussed 150,000, and then we went to a not to exceed of 200,000 last night. So we felt that was that took into consideration inflation is what they said that the 200 would have given them, and that would be put in an escrow account after site plan approval, not before recording the final plat or after recording the final plat. So they would be able to start building that fence sooner than later. Questions?
You still in your rebuttal period? Or you finished?
I just, we've worked extremely hard with the Southwind Neighborhood Association. I feel that if we could get the zoning entitlements, we would be working very closely with the Neighborhood Association because he'll have to close on the land, and then site plan approval will be going fast forward. So I feel that getting the zoning entitlements, allowing him to purchase the property is something that would be more positive than negative. If he does not get the zoning entitlement, then the whole project just goes away. Then nothing happens there. It stays off us. So
okay.
I appreciate your consideration.
Any other questions for the applicants at this time?
Thank you.
Hearing none? Okay. Then this closes the public portion of our meeting. Dr. Pritchard?
Move approval of agenda item number 1, MJR 21-45, Southwind adjacent.
Okay, we have a motion. We do have a second. Is there any discussion at this time? Okay.
Thank you. I really do have a problem with the zoning portion of this. If we're talking specifically about the zoning, I do agree that to go from a restaurant office to high density residential is a big leap. And without any details on what that is going to be, I don't think it's fair to the neighborhood, the surrounding areas, and I don't I don't think we can make decisions based on traffic, on all of the things that we have to take into consideration to approve a project. So I'm very uncomfortable voting to change the zoning with so much unknown. So that's my position.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Cindy's going to disagree with me about this, but you could have, the developer, you could have handled this differently. You could have come in with a full, you could have come in with a full set of elevations, renderings, landscape plan, full site plan, done a PD. The neighbors, you could have agreed with the neighbors. You could have gone back and forth and kept their faith and moved through this process in a different way. I think that Cindy's saying that you're trying to get the entitlements, you just went about getting the entitlements, to me, in the wrong way. So I'd like to see you go ask, I'm not against this. I think you should go ask the Wilsons for more time and come back with a full PD, with a site plan, with a landscape plan, with elevations, renderings, with an agreement with the neighborhood.
If not this, then what actually happens to this land? Like what is ever built there?
Yeah, we don't have an office market, so there won't be office on the site.
Yeah.
But if it's been sitting vacant for so long, why do we have to rush and approve something when we don't know what we're approving?
Well, we're just approving the use, and you could have handled that a different way, I feel like.
I'm not comfortable just saying, sure, why not?
Those are my comments.
Any further discussion?
Yes. For the neighborhood, I've read every letter, and thank you all for sending those out. And from my, I like to make things real simple. Even if the developer agreed to build a wall and everything, from what I've read, the tone is, I don't think the neighborhood wants this built there. That's what I want to hear. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's not about whether they meet all these conditions. I don't think the neighborhood wants this project there, and I respect that.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion before we get ready to vote? Hearing none, I assume that we're ready to vote. Are we going to do this as one vote or individualized?
I can do a roll call if you'd like, or we can start. Do a roll call?
Roll call, yes.
All right. Ms. O'Connell?
No.
Mr. Fleming?
No.
Mr. Gill?
No.
Ms. Wilbanks?
No.
Mr. Tolles?
No.
Mr. Thomas?
No.
Mr. McHenry?
No.
Dr. Pritchard?
No.
Chair Sharp?
No.
Motion fails.
Motion fails. Thank you. Now, Dr. Pritchard, we're ready for you to introduce number 14.
Agenda item number 14, SUP 22-01, Raleigh, cell tower at 3788 Raleigh-Millington Road. Recommendation is approval with conditions.
Okay, since we do, first of all, is the applicant here? Give us your name and address.
Luke Hatzerman, representing Tower Ventures, 495 Tennessee Street, Memphis, Tennessee.
Thank you. And we do have opposition, so we will hear the case.
Give me just a moment, Your Honor, I'm sorry. Good morning, and thank you. Teresa Shelton, Municipal Planner for Land Use, Division of Planning and Development. We have before a cell tower, SUP 22001, special use permit for 150-foot monopole communications tower. Location is 3788 Raleigh-Millington Road. Owner and applicant, True Love Missionary Baptist Church. Co-owner, Bishop T.L. Murden. Representative is Lou Katzerman. And this is going to be on 1.4 acres and is in a residential 8 zoning district. Here's a vicinity map showing the location of the proposed site. This is the overall site plan layout of the cell tower. Here's a coverage summary provided by Mr. Castleman. He'll give you more details when he gets up to speak. The coverage area for that cell tower. Here's an actual site photo of where the proposed tower will be going. And this is kind of like in a little different angles. There's another one looking northwest. As far as Memphis 3.0, Memphis 3.0 really doesn't speak to or address cell towers. They are regulated by the Telecommunication Act. In conclusion, the applicant is requesting for a 150-foot monopole communication tower within a residential 8 zoning district. Staff agrees that the approval and criteria are met with the Unified Development Code section 9.6.9. Also, I agree that the special use permit for the cell tower is in line with paragraph 2.6.2 I1. And this proposal will not have a substantial or undue adverse effect against adjacent properties. So as you can see, this is my recommendations with the conditions, and I'm here for any questions that you all may have.
Thank you, Ms. Shelton. Any questions of staff at this time? Okay, we're ready.
Thank you. At this time, we would like to defer to our opposition. Let them speak first, please.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have 2 cards of opposition. You can comment any. Okay. In the regular mode of presentation, then we'd like to hear the applicant first. We will try to hear the applicant first. Okay. All right. Mr. Castleman.
Yes, Teresa, can you bring up the PowerPoint that I sent to you yesterday, please? All right, can you go to slide number 2? This is an extremely busy area, both traffic on Raleigh-Millington Road, the density of the neighborhoods. We approached by Dish Network to build a cell tower at this site. They approved it. And let me give you a little history. About 7, maybe 8 years ago, I first approached Pastor Murden to do a cell tower at the exact same site as this, exact same location. So that right there tells me that the need for coverage never goes away unless you actually build infrastructure to make it go away. Now, there is a cell tower that has been there for at least 20 years. When I was working for T-Mobile back in the 2000s, I put T-Mobile on the site. It's about a half mile up the road. It's owned by SBA Sites, national publicly traded company. Dish Network, this letter says that the area, that they need both sites. They need the site up the road a half a mile away, and they need our site, our new site that we're going to build for them, that we propose to build. Teresa, if you'd go to slide 14, please.
When to stop.
The last slide. All right. All right. This slide right here has been run through a computer model, blessed by RF engineers, showing the need for coverage for this tower. That's what we need to prove here, is the need for coverage. The maps clearly show that the one on the left, how this cell tower will light up this area and serve the customers of Dish Network adequately. The need for coverage is part of the things that you have to establish under the Telecom Act, right there establishes the need for coverage, substantial proof. Now, as you know, we recently had this ice storm that took 125,000 people without power for days. And matter of fact, we probably already know somebody who still doesn't have power. The ice storm event of last week is the third major power outage since 1994 here in Memphis. Each one of these power outages, again, proved the need for cellular coverage in this community. With a cell tower, and a cell phone, a person still has access to telecommunications, data, emergency services, internet, and other services. So again, I want to reemphasize that. Let's see. There has been some opposition saying that we don't need another tower. We've already got a tower. This tower will cause, and fill in the blank, whatever they say that it will. However, the fact that there's been a tower there for up the road a half a mile, at least for 20 years, invalidates this argument, because if it ruins property values, well, the existing tower didn't ruin property values. It'll make us sick, health effects. Well, nobody's sick as far as I know because of that cell tower. And again, those are the two objections that we hear on every cell tower that comes before the board. No one has ever substantially proved either. Matter of fact, the last time we were here, I presented a appraisal report done by a licensed appraiser, stamped by that appraiser, who studied cell towers here in Memphis and in Rutherford County, Tennessee, Murfreesboro. And he saw, his conclusion was that the properties near the cell towers appreciate at the same rate as the properties away from the cell towers. Now, as far as the health effects go, I have evidence from the American Cancer Society that says that they have never found any link to cell towers and cancer. So under the Telecom Act, we have to be rooted in substantial written proof. We can provide that, or have provided it, and that we're not just sitting here looking at the internet and finding what we can find to be against a tower. We have substantial proof that none of this happens. This neighborhood needs this coverage, as those maps clearly state. Now, Teresa, will you move to slide number 10, please? Okay. Another thing that was brought up at the meeting is that cell towers are only needed in certain areas. This is Poplar Avenue, Germantown. Those houses there in front of the cell tower sell for like $700,000 to $900,000. We built that cell tower there last year, right at that neighborhood on Poplar Avenue. Just so you know, we built 3 towers last year in Germantown. 2 of the 3 we had received no opposition. We also built one at Dogwood Elementary School. Cell towers are needed everywhere where people use their phones. This is a completely scientific endeavor. We do not say, hey, this is not like a retail center or a location for a hotel. This would make a great location for a hotel, or this would make a great location for a cell tower. It doesn't work that way. All of our locations are grounded in scientific evidence, scientific proof, and backed up by these RF engineers. In conclusion, I would ask that you respectfully approve our application. This is no different. This application is no different than any other application that we have presented before this board. And cell towers have learned to coexist with people in neighborhoods. They're needed everywhere where people live, work, and play. And this site is no exception. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cashman. Any questions of him?
Yes, Daryl Chalmers. So Lou, as with most of your towers, have you accommodated for decorative things around it? I mean, you put the necessary screening or
Yes.
proposing?
Yes, we propose landscaping on the 3 visible sides. This site is going to be directly behind the main church building, and we're not going to landscape that because nobody will see it. But the sides that are visible, we have no problem with landscaping.
Thank you. You know, the statement I've made here before about cell towers, I have one, a football field from my house, and I opposed it initially till I learned, but I'm sure all of us have these phones here, and it's a necessary thing until some new technology comes that does not require them. And I had poor cell coverage by my home, and now I don't because of the cell tower. So I feel I really respect the neighborhoods, and I understand, but this is something that we have to have in all communities, because if you didn't have coverage, it causes major problems for all of us. And I'm sure everyone in this room probably has some type of communication device that relies upon that. And you know, I went through reading all of the. I was on that side of it, looking at the health things, and you know, it'll be an eyesore. To be honest, the one that's near my home, I don't even see it. You just really don't, because I don't go around. I don't drive or walk around looking up, and and I'm being as honest as I can be, and I want to hear the opposition. I just know I've been where you are with that. And I'm glad that we worked it out in my area because it has been a benefit to have it. They've added, because my carrier wasn't on that tower when they first put it there, but that has since changed, and it has really been a benefit. And I hope that all communities, wealthy communities, poor communities, every community does need cell towers to where we will have coverage in every part of the community. They're a necessary evil, if you will, with this technology that we currently use. Thanks.
Thank you.
Lou, just to support your argument a little, we own a 150,000-foot office building to the right of that picture. And if you walk into the core of the building, you lose your signal. And I actually had a tenant the other day said they weren't going to expand because they kept losing the signal. And it's due to not having enough towers in Germantown because of the fights with Germantown and the residents over the cell tower. So it can affect, it can affect all of us in different ways. And I agreed with your argument too about the power outages. That's very apropos argument for right now. So,
thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're ready to hear the opposition. You give us your name and address, please. You have 10 minutes total.
Good morning. My name is Shelley Lewis. I live at 4114 Stillwood Drive, and I promise to be short, sweet, and to the point. He stated that our opposition was we just didn't want a cell tower. That is really not our opposition. When we went to the neighborhood meeting that they had, they told us that the cell tower would enhance the whole neighborhood. But you didn't invite the whole neighborhood. He told us the parameters for the houses and addresses that needed to be contacted according to the city council were 500 feet. After researching and asking questions, I was informed that 500 feet is the minimum. So why don't you send it to the whole subdivision? On my street, it was the first 3 houses. Nobody past that got anything. So when we started asking, then they started voicing their opinion. They didn't know anything about the meeting. Our opposition was you didn't inform the subdivision, but you want it to benefit the subdivision. Then he didn't say, we have Memphis Light, Gas, and Water tower, that's about 4/10 of the amount from this site to the south on Raleigh Millington, which has stuff on top of it. The other tower he did address, that's at St. Elmo in Raleigh Millington, which is 4/10 of a mile. Down at Egypt Central in Raleigh Millington, there is another tower. There's a proposed tower on Austin P, which is 1.4 miles from this tower they're proposing. So my question is, we are a residential area. How many towers are we gonna have to look at? That tower is one tower. When you see that tower, come back down here to this corner. It's another tower for us that's already there. We have a tower like that one at St. Elmo, and then there's one down the street at Raleigh, Millington, and Egypt Central. That's not talking about the Comcast tower that's at Raleigh, Millington, and Fraser, Raleigh Road. They're all over our neighborhood. That's one tower in that neighborhood. I don't see any other towers. As far as health, yes, it has been said that it does not, the radio waves do not affect your health, but it has not been proven totally safe either. That's the other side of that but. And then my next question is, according to the 2012 Spectrum Act, specifically 6409 and 6409A section, what effect will that act have on the tower that they're proposing to put up there? And the next thing is, how many people in our area have Dish? Did you check on that? Because we have not had we've never had problems with our service in our area. So who are you trying to benefit? Because you didn't invite the subdivision, you didn't invite the neighborhood, you invited a select few that were within the parameter of 500 feet, which I'm led to believe and was told that that's the minimum. So why didn't you invite the whole neighborhood? And that's our opposition. Everybody didn't have a chance to hear it. Everybody didn't have a chance to voice their opinion if they wanted to. So at this time, we're just asking that you delay it so everyone in the neighborhood can hear what they're saying. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, and I didn't say this. It's in the middle of the flight path of the geese, so now it's going to affect the wildlife because the geese go to that section. That's their haven. So now you're going to disrupt the geese that fly over.
Okay. Thank you. We'll hear the next opposition before we ask questions.
Good morning. I'm Dolores Brookins, and I live at 4144 Hallview Drive, where I've been since 1983. And I have never had any problem with my communication, with my internet, with my cell phones, my computers, none of that until very recently when the ice storm. That's the first time my power has been out. And I am here, thank you. I concur with Ms. Lewis, and we do have a signed petition here from some of the residents in the neighborhood as well. I'd also like to state that whereas Mr. is it Cashman? Yes, I think they had a neighborhood meeting. I am directly on the corner of where the proposed tower is going to be. And it's not like I have to walk out my house and look up. It's right there. And if the tower is 0.5 miles down the road, the other one, then I am closer to that tower as well than where the proposed tower is going to be. And I like to state that since I've been there just about 40 years, we are a residential neighborhood. And I wouldn't like to see that change to an industrial with everything that's coming in now. So another tower, do we need it? Absolutely not. It's going to change our neighborhood totally. We have enough problems to deal with than to have a neighborhood that looks unlike a homeownership residential neighborhood. And I say that to say that I'm in total opposition, and as well as those that are around me. And I pray that this board, as well as the Memphis Land Development, really oppose this. It's not about bringing a community and strong arming and telling them what they need, because if the 0.5 mile tower supports Mr. Cashman's, then it definitely supports me in the fact that we don't need another one. And we pray that you hear our opposition and that you all will not vote to have a tower put in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Board members, do you have any questions of the opposition? If not, we're ready for the 3-minute rebuttal from Mr. Caswell.
All right. Thank you. Very quickly, this is from the American Cancer website. I'm welcome to hand these out to you if you'd like. Again, it reinforces that they found no ill effects. Right here, I have a copy of this is the notification list. Nearly 160 letters went out. Of those 160 letters that went out, 10 people showed up from the neighborhood, which 3 of them were family Pastor Mertens. So 7 people showed up. All right. I also have here, this is the neighborhood notification rules under the UDC. It's 500 feet. That's the rule. It's been that way, I don't know, 13, 14 years, as long as I can remember. So we complied with this to the letter. When we make up the letters for the neighborhood meeting, they are taken to OPD, and OPD mails them. OPD also checks off these lists, including both property owners and renters or tenants, that they get these notices. So they got our notice, they got the notice today, and we've complied with the 500-foot rule. The problem with the 500-foot rule is just exactly like the college football playoffs. The fifth football team is always upset because they're left out of the playoffs. This is the same thing. If you're 500 feet away, you get a notification. If you're 600 feet away, you don't. That's the rules. Every developer in Memphis deals with that same rule. That's not limited to Tower Ventures. Would you go back to slide number 4 real quick, Teresa? Now, see, go back one more, right there. Right here, that church parcel is in yellow. The church also owns that parcel to the north, the kind of rectangle parcel right there. So it's a big piece of property. We're going to landscape it. We're going to make it as visually intrusive as possible. Now, go back to the Germantown slide. Again, that was just up there. I want to state something else. All right, that's right there. Next one. That's the one at Office Max we just did. All right, go to the one before that. You can't, right. You can't see it from here, but at Riverdale and Neshoba, Verizon is building a cell tower, which is, I don't know, a half a mile, maybe 7/10 of a mile north of there. So again, we prove the need for coverage because there's no difference in any neighborhood. The need for coverage is the need for coverage, no matter where it is. We have people that have gotten up here in opposition and offered their opinion that the tower's not needed. Would you go back to the last slide? That's at Landers Ford and Kyreville, by the way. All right, there's your proof. There's your proof that the coverage is needed. And then the last thing I'd like to address is this issue of the petition with people against it. Again, that's not allowed under the Telecom Act. Petitions are not considered substantial evidence that you can base a denial on. But anyway, do you have any questions? And I appreciate you hearing us this morning.
Yes, I have one. Look, can you address the neighborhood where they talk about the existing towers? Can you explain why this one is needed along with the others?
There's not enough capacity in that one, that tower's a half a mile away, so that coverage blob that you're seeing would only apply to the half a mile north of there. It would not effectively cover this neighborhood. It wouldn't cover capacity needs. It wouldn't cover data speeds. and it would also result in more drop calls. Remember, these cellular carriers are large publicly traded corporations. If they didn't need a second site within a half a mile, they're not going to build that site. They're trying to cover a certain amount of population there. Dish Network is a new carrier to Memphis. They're going to be the 4th national carrier. They're, in fact, taking over where Sprint left off. They're going to be a low-cost carrier, going to offer a lot of services. This is a good thing for the consumer of Memphis. It's also a good thing for Memphis that Dish has picked Memphis as one of their initial launch markets. Carriers like Memphis, and like Verizon, recently went to 5G. I guess they started broadcasting in December of 19. They picked Memphis as one of their 30 initial markets for 5G. I mean, that's a good thing for Memphis. The city of Memphis benefited greatly by all the money that Verizon spent building out a 5G network here. And this is basically the same thing with a different carrier.
Thank you.
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
Kind of along the same line, how many cell towers are existing there in that area now?
There's one a half a mile up the street. There's one that y'all approved about a year ago on Austin P.
Approaching a railroad crossing.
Almost to Covington Pike. There is another one on Austin P about a mile and a half away south, a real short one there. As you come off the connector, you get onto Austin P and it's there on your left. I put T-Mobile on that 20 years ago. Those towers are not covering this area. They're just simply too far away. Cell towers work just like lights in a building. We can't shut the lights off in this room and then be able to see because the light's out in the hall. You got to have a light in a specific place. That's the thing about cell tower development. Everything is specific, location specific, and scientifically rooted.
Okay, so you can't co-locate on some of the existing towers. That doesn't help.
Well, when you go back to slide number 2, please, Teresa. Right, they don't have the bandwidth and they don't have the capacity. All right, that's the building permit where they are going on that tower to the north. Go back to that next slide. There's their letter of a need stating that they need both towers in that neighborhood to make this work. This is a good thing for this neighborhood. They're going to have unbelievable coverage, reliable coverage, capacity. No, they shouldn't have a lot of drop calls, and they're going to have fast data. So,
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions of the applicant?
Yes. Could I see that list of addresses that you actually sent those notices to? So I do have property in the area. However, I have not been a fan of checking the mail for that particular property. Thank you.
Back to that vicinity map slide, please. This is the notification area on a tax map.
Okay. Yeah, I'm definitely not in there.
600 square feet.
Okay. That address is wrong, but I see it. I'm on here, but the address is wrong for the particular property that I have in the neighborhood. Just wanted to see that, but.
We have an independent third party that does the addressing for us. They do probably 80% of every application that's brought before this board.
Okay.
I guess after a couple of hundred towers, they've made a mistake, but I'd be glad to get you a notification.
Nonetheless, just checking. I wasn't sure. Yeah.
Okay. If there aren't any further questions, I would like to close the public portion of this meeting. Dr. Pritchard.
Move approval of agenda item number 14, SUP 22-01, Raleigh Cell Tower.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, it has been moved. I hear a second. Is there any discussion? Any discussion by our board members? Okay, hearing none, I assume that we're ready to vote. All in favor say aye. 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 Those opposed? Nay. Okay. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. And if we don't have any further announcements? No announcements?
That's the end.
Okay, Happy New Year, everybody, and this meeting is adjourned.